The buzz wasn't mine. My phone stayed dark on my side of the nightstand, face down where I'd left it. The vibration came from the other rectangle. Ashley's, plugged in like it belonged there, like it had every night. 2:47 a.m. glowed in clean white numbers. I lay there long enough to hear my own breathing, to make sure I wasn't dreaming. Ashley was asleep beside me, turned slightly away, one arm bent under the pillow. Her breathing had that steady rhythm she got when she felt safe. That's what hit first. She felt safe. I didn't. I reached over, careful not to jostle the bed. The phone was warm from charging. The screen lit up the room in a thin blue wash that made everything look colder than it was. A notification banner. A name I didn't recognize. No heart emoji. No "hey babe." None of the cute lies people use when they're trying not to look guilty. Just 8 words. Can't stop thinking about last night. Same place. Signed with a single initial. B. My mouth went dry so fast it felt like my tongue had turned to paper. I stared at the message until my eyes tried to rewrite it into something harmless. They couldn't. There wasn't any harmless way to read last night at 2:47 in the morning. I swiped down for more, then stopped myself. Not because I didn't want to know, because I did. Because I knew this part of me. The part that would start digging for pain like it was duty. I locked the screen. I set the phone back exactly where it was, angle and all, cable tucked the same way. No fingerprints. No evidence that I'd seen what I'd seen. My hand moved like I was putting a loaded weapon back in a drawer. Then I lay down and faced the ceiling. Ashley exhaled, soft and unbothered. The room smelled like our laundry detergent and the candle she insisted on burning even when it gave me a headache. Our house, our bed, our life. Everything built to look solid. And there I was, awake in the dark, understanding something clean and ugly. I wasn't her partner anymore. I was her cover story. I didn't confront her. I didn't nudge her awake. I didn't ask a question I wasn't ready to hear answered. I listened to her breathe and let something colder replace panic. Something clear enough to hold on to. If she could lie this easily, then anger wasn't going to save me. Facts would. Morning showed up like nothing happened. Sunlight through the kitchen window. The soft clink of a spoon against a mug. Ashley hummed under her breath like she was practicing being normal. She wore one of my old t-shirts, gray, stretched at the collar. Like the kind of comfort you borrow when you don't feel guilty. Coffee steamed on the counter. 2 slices of bread sat in the toaster. "Morning," she said, bright enough to pass for warmth. "Yeah." My voice came out even. That surprised me. She didn't look at me when she said, "I'll be late again." Board presentation. There it was. The line. The routine. The little professional shield she could hide behind because it sounded important. I watched her hands instead of her face. Efficient. Confidence. Not a tremor in them. She moved like a person with nothing to fear. "Okay," I said. That's when she finally glanced up, and it wasn't guilt I saw. It was impatience, like my presence was another appliance she had to work around. "You've been quiet," she said, and the way she said it made quiet sound like a flaw. "I'm fine." She gave me a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You're comfortable, Ryan. Sometimes I think you've been comfortable for so long you forgot how to move." Comfortable. That was her favorite way to cut. Not an insult you can point at. Something that makes you sound soft without calling you soft. I took my toast, sat at the table, and chewed like the bread was sand. Ashley sipped her coffee, checked her phone face down like it was a habit, then kissed my cheek with the speed of a formality. "I'll text you," she said. She didn't. The door shut. Her car backed out. The house went quiet in that fake, clean way it does after someone leaves and you're left with their scent and their lies. I got through work on autopilot, answered emails, sat in meetings, nodded at the right times. Every so often my brain replayed 8 words and a single initial like a loop I couldn't turn off. By late afternoon, I knew I couldn't go home and pretend I didn't have teeth. So I went to Jake Monroe's tavern. Jake's place smelled like old wood, fryer oil, and spilled beer that had soaked into the floor years ago. It wasn't pretty. It was honest. The kind of honest person that doesn't try to impress you. Jake saw me the second I walked in. He didn't ask if I wanted my usual. He just poured it and slid it across like he already knew I was here for a reason. "You look like you got hit," he said. I wrapped my hand around the glass. Cold. Solid. Real. "I think Ashley's sleeping with her boss." Saying it out loud changed the air. Turned a thought into a thing. It made my private nightmare something that could exist outside my head. Something another man could hear and not laugh at. Jake didn't flinch. Didn't make a joke. He just watched me for a long second like he was deciding what kind of answer I needed. "You sure?" he asked. "No," I took a slow drink. "But I'm done being stupid." Jake nodded once. "Then don't act stupid." "I'm not." I set the glass down carefully. "I'm going to find the truth. All of it." That was my first confession. Not that she betrayed me. People betray. It happens. My confession was simpler. I wasn't going to beg for honesty from a liar. I was going to collect facts until the story couldn't hide behind smiles anymore. The next day I stopped performing. No more good husband autopilot. No more pretending the weird gaps in her stories were just stress. Just work. Just life. I didn't need drama. I needed facts. Facts don't care how much you love someone. I started small. Laundry. The stuff she tossed in the hamper like it was nothing. Her blazer had a scent on the collar that didn't belong in our house. Expensive cologne, the kind that tries too hard to sound rich. Not mine. Never had been. I checked the credit card statements like I was doing taxes. Charges downtown that didn't match her board presentations. A hotel bar tab on a night she told me she ate with the team. Rideshare receipts that ended at a building address. Not a company address. A luxury condo. I didn't confront her. Confrontation is what you do when you're still hoping the truth will come wrapped in mercy. I wasn't hoping anymore. I was verifying. I screenshotted it. I emailed myself copies. I made a simple folder with a boring name. Then I typed his name into Google. Brandon Pierce. The search results weren't subtle. Articles. Photos. Charity galas. A local magazine called him a rising leader. He smiled in every picture like he'd been trained for it. Hand on a donor's shoulder, tucks sharp, teeth bright. He looked like the kind of man people trusted because they wanted to. And in those photos, I started noticing the same detail. His wife, Claire Pierce, stood half a step behind him in almost every shot. Perfect posture, perfect hair, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Like the muscles were doing their job, but the person inside her was somewhere else. I stared at her face longer than I should have. Because it made something click that I didn't want to admit yet. If Brandon Pierce was a system, if this was his lifestyle, not his mistake, then I probably wasn't the only spouse bleeding quietly in the background. And that meant I wasn't alone. It didn't comfort me. It sharpened me. The text came in the next afternoon while I was staring at my computer screen and not seeing a single word. Unknown number. No greeting. No small talk. No name. Maple and Grind. 6:30. Back table. Come alone. That was it. I read it twice, then once more like repetition could reveal a trap. My gut said it was real. My gut also said it didn't matter because my life was already burning, and I was tired of pretending it wasn't. I didn't reply. I just went. Maple and Grind sat in Columbus with that polished, modern look. Exposed brick, clean lines, people with laptops pretending they were working. I showed up early and took a seat where I could see the door and the windows. Old habit. Not paranoia. Preparation. At 6:31, she walked in. Claire Pierce didn't scan the room like a nervous person. She moved like she already knew where she was going. Composed. Controlled. Exhausted in a way that didn't come from sleep. She stopped at my table and looked at me like she'd already read my file. "Ryan Carter?" Her voice was calm, not soft. I stood halfway, polite on instinct. "Yeah." She sat without asking, slid an envelope across the table, thick enough to have weight. "Don't open it yet," she said. I didn't touch it. "Who are you?" Her eyes didn't blink. "Claire Pierce." I watched my own hands stay still on the tabletop. "You're his wife." "Yes." She let the word hang there like a hook. "And your wife is Ashley." I nodded once. Claire leaned in slightly, not dramatic, just direct. They've been doing this a long time. Something in my chest tried to harden further, like it had room. I finally pulled the envelope closer and opened it. Photos, dates, receipts, screenshots, a timeline laid out like a prosecutor's exhibit. Hotel names, locations, messages printed and highlighted. No guessing, no maybe. The kind of documentation you collect when you've been forced to become your own detective. I flipped through without breathing. Claire watched my face, like she'd seen every version of this reaction before. "This isn't a mistake," she said. "It's a pattern. Brandon uses the company, uses the power. He thinks it's untouchable." I looked up. "Why give this to me?" "Because I can't do it alone." Her voice stayed even, but her eyes carried the tired edge of years. "And because you're the first person I've found who looks like he's done playing the role." I didn't like being read that easily, but she wasn't wrong. Claire folded her hands. "I've been planning and waiting for the right partner." "Partner," I repeated, tasting the word. It sounded like business. Sounded like war. "Not romance," she said immediately, as if she'd heard the thought form. "Strategy. I want control of the narrative before they control it again." I stared down at the envelope, at my new life in paper form. The grief was still there, deep and ugly, but something else was rising above it now. Something cleaner. Purpose. I looked back at her. "What do you want from me?" Claire didn't hesitate. "I want you to stand where they can see you, and I want you to stay steady while they panic." I sat back, feeling the shift. My story wasn't about heartbreak anymore. It was about leverage. Claire didn't talk like someone chasing revenge. She talked like someone building a case. We met again the next day, not because we liked each other, but because momentum matters. She laid everything out clean. What she had, what she could prove, what would hold up under scrutiny, and what would get dismissed as marital drama if we played it wrong. "The gala," she said, tapping a date on her calendar. "Columbus Country Club. Donors, board members, press. Brandon loves that room." I stared at the date. "You want to confront him there?" "No," Claire's eyes stayed steady. "I want to introduce uncertainty into his ecosystem. We walk in together. Nothing loud. Nothing illegal. Just visible." "Visible," I repeated. Claire nodded. "People like Brandon survive because they control the story. We put a different story in the room and let panic do the work." It sounded too simple, but I understood the logic. Men like that don't fear the truth in private. They fear optics in public. A week later, I was standing under fluorescent lights in a tux shop, staring at myself like I'd borrowed somebody else's skin. The clerk fussed with the sleeves. "You'll look sharp." I didn't care about sharpness. I cared about being unshakable. Claire showed up once just to confirm the fit, and the way the clerk suddenly straightened told me everything about how people respond to wealth and posture. Claire had both. She wasn't loud. She didn't need to be. After that, we started placing ourselves in the right places. Coffee shops near downtown. Quiet bars where corporate people went to feel regular. A restaurant Brandon's circle liked, where the host recognized Claire and pretended not to stare at me. We didn't hold hands. We didn't act like lovers. We just looked like two adults who'd made a deliberate choice to arrive together. That was enough. Rumors don't need proof to travel. They just need a shape. By the third public appearance, I felt it. Eyes on us that weren't casual. People checking their phones after they looked away. Conversations pausing half a beat too long. And then Ashley started coming home different. Wired. Tight. Questions disguised as jokes. One night, she leaned against the kitchen counter and watched me like she was trying to catch a twitch. "So," she said lightly, "how's Jake? You've been at the tavern more." "He's fine. And you've been out." She sipped her wine. "Anything going on I should know about?" There it was. The fishing line. I kept my face calm. Just work. Life. Ashley studied me, then smiled like she'd decided I wasn't smart enough to be dangerous. "You've been quiet lately. It's nice." Nice. Like silence was only valuable when it made her comfortable. She went to bed early. Phone face down on her side, like always. I stayed up in the living room, not drinking, not pacing, just thinking. Claire was right. You didn't have to attack powerful people head-on. You just had to let them feel watched. Because once fear enters the room, it starts making decisions for them. And people make mistakes when they're afraid. Columbus Country Club looked like money trying to pretend it was taste. White lights, tall glass, a chandelier hanging over the ballroom like a crown. Men in tuxes laughing too loud. Women in dresses that cost more than my first car. Smiles practiced to perfection. Claire arrived in a simple black dress that didn't beg for attention, and still took it. Not because she was trying, because she belonged in that world, and she walked like she'd stopped apologizing for existing in it years ago. She threaded her arm through mine like it was business. "Remember," she said quietly, lips barely moving. No emotion, just presence. "I'm good," I said. We stepped inside. The room tilted toward us without admitting it. Heads turned and then snapped back like people were afraid their interest would show. Whispers started in the same instant, soft, fast, carried on champagne breath. Then I saw them. Ashley wore red like she wanted to be seen. Brandon Pierce stood beside her in a tux that fit like it had been tailored to his ego. His hand rested at the small of her back with the kind of ownership that makes men think they're untouchable. They looked like a couple meant to be photographed, until Ashley's eyes found us. Her face drained so fast it was almost cinematic. For a split second she forgot to perform. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. Her hand tightened around her clutch like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Brandon followed her stare. I watched recognition hit him in pieces, Claire, then me, then the calculation. He didn't go pale. He went still. The mask stayed on, but something behind it shifted. Ashley stepped away from him, just one step, like distance could undo consequences. She crossed the room too quickly, anger forcing her feet. She stopped in front of me, eyes sharp and shining. "What the hell is this?" she hissed. Too low for the crowd, but not low enough for the people nearest us. I didn't move, didn't tighten my jaw, didn't give her the satisfaction of a reaction. "I'm here with my date," I said level. Ashley blinked like she couldn't process the word. "You're... Ryan, are you insane?" Claire spoke then, calm as ice. "Ashley." Ashley's head snapped toward her. "Don't say my name like you know me." Claire smiled, faint and controlled. "I know enough." Brandon appeared beside Ashley, too smooth, too late. He offered a hand to Claire like this was salvageable. "Claire, we should talk somewhere private." Claire looked at his hand like it was something dirty on a tablecloth. "No," she said. "We're fine right here." People were watching now. Not openly, just enough. The kind of watching that becomes memory. Ashley's voice rose a notch. "This is humiliating. You can't just show up here with her." I kept my eyes on Ashley. "You don't get to tell me where I can stand anymore." Her breath hitched. The next words came out before she could stop them. "Too much, too fast." "This isn't what you think?" she snapped, then immediately tightened her mouth like she'd realized how stupid that sounded, because of course it was what I thought. She just confirmed there was something to think about. Claire turned slightly toward Brandon, her voice still quiet, but sharp enough to cut through the air between us. "You lost the right to touch me," she said, "when you started touching employees." The word employees landed like a dropped glass. Not because everyone heard it, because the people who mattered did. Couple nearby went still. A man with a donor pin on his lapel glanced at Brandon like he'd just turned into a liability. A woman in pearls looked at Ashley, then away, like she'd already decided what box to put her in. Brandon's smile faltered for the first time. Just a crack. But once a mask cracks in public, everyone starts looking for the rest of it. Ashley looked between us, panic now bleeding through her anger. "Ryan," she said softer, like she was trying to pull me back into the role. "Please, not here." I leaned in just enough for her to hear me over the room. "You made it here," I said. "I'm just finally showing up." Then I straightened, offered Claire my arm again, and walked with her deeper into the ballroom like we belonged. Behind us, I felt it, the shift. The room didn't erupt. It didn't need to. Calculated. By Monday, the machine was already moving. That's the thing people don't understand about corporate power. It looks slow until it isn't. Once the right people smell risk, it becomes fast, surgical, and cold. I was at my desk when my phone buzzed. Marcus Hill. Internal contact. He worked in compliance. One of those guys who knew where the bodies were buried because he was paid to keep them from stacking up. I answered quietly. Yeah. You didn't hear this from me, Marcus said. His voice was tight. HR and the board are in emergency meetings. Brandon's name is being used with phrases like power imbalance and hostile environment. I stared at my computer screen, not blinking. And Ashley, pause. Her access is limited. They told her to turn in credentials. She's not handling it well. I hung up and sat there for a long moment, feeling nothing warm about being right, just the clean weight of it becoming real. That night Ashley came home wrecked in a way she couldn't hide behind makeup. Eyes red, hair pulled back too tight. The bag dropped on the floor like she'd forgotten what pride was for. She didn't say hello. She didn't ask how my day was. She went straight to the accusation like it was a life raft. This is your fault, she said. You embarrassed me. I looked at her, really looked. The woman I married was in there somewhere, but she'd been buried under entitlement and contempt for a long time. My fault, I repeated. You brought her there. You set me up. Her voice cracked, then hardened. You sabotaged my life. I nodded once, slow. I've known for weeks. Ashley froze like I'd slapped her without moving. You what? I've known. I kept my voice flat. You did this to yourself. I just stopped helping you hide it. For a second, she looked like she might actually confess, like she might tell the truth just to breathe. Then her face twisted into something ugly. So what, you're going to ruin me? After everything? After everything? I said. You mean after all the years I showed up while you were disappearing? She opened her mouth, then shut it. No argument, just rage. I didn't fight for understanding. I didn't explain myself like I needed her approval to be done. I picked up my phone, walked past her, and called the number I'd saved last week. Hi, I said when the receptionist answered. I need to schedule a divorce consultation. Ashley heard it. Her head snapped toward me, eyes wide. Ryan. I kept walking. As soon as possible. Later, Claire called. Are you free? She asked. Yeah. I have him, she said. I didn't ask what she meant. I already knew. Her voice stayed calm. He reached out, offering money, trying to buy silence. I put him on speaker. I'm recording. A pause. Then Brandon's voice bled through the line in the background. Smooth at first, then irritated when Claire didn't bend. I heard enough to understand the shape of it. Bribes wrapped in insults. Threats dressed up as warnings. Claire didn't interrupt him. She let him talk. Because powerful men don't realize they're confessing when they're angry. 2 days later, Brandon made a different kind of mistake. He showed up at my workplace. Not a call. Not an email. In person. Like intimidation works better when you can smell it. I was walking out to my car when I saw him waiting near the entrance. Hands in his pockets. Posture relaxed like he owned the sidewalk. He stepped in close. Ryan, right? I didn't stop moving. You're lost. His smile tightened. You think you're a hero? I finally faced him. I think you're reckless. That's when his composure slipped. Just a flash. The real man under the image. He grabbed my shirt near the collar and yanked. Hard enough to wrinkle fabric and draw eyes. I didn't swing. I didn't shout. I just let the moment exist exactly as it was. Him putting hands on me in front of cameras and witnesses. Security came fast. 2 guards, then a supervisor. Brandon tried to talk his way out of it, but his hands had already written the story. 1 guard peeled him off. Another stepped between us. Sir, the supervisor said firmly, you need to leave. Brandon looked at me as they guided him back, and for the first time, his eyes weren't confident. They were calculating, like he'd just realized I wasn't a problem he could bully into silence. I watched him get escorted out, and I understood something new, something almost peaceful. This wasn't emotional anymore. It was professional, documented, witnessed, and it was going to cost them. The story broke on a Wednesday, not a rumor thread, not a vague sources say, an actual piece, names, dates, patterns, corporate language stripped down to what it really meant. Abuse of power, cover-ups, complaints that went missing, money moving in the dark. By lunch, people weren't asking if it was true. They were asking how long it had been true. Texts hit my phone from numbers I hadn't heard from in years. You okay? Saw the article. Call me. Ashley called 2, 3 times. Then she showed up at the house like she still had authority there. Her face was pale, makeup rushed, eyes sharp with panic. Did you do this? I didn't step aside to let her in. You did. This is ruining me, she said, voice tight like she was trying not to beg. They're freezing accounts. They're acting like like you're part of it? I finished for her. Yeah, because you were. Her mouth opened, then closed. For once, no polished contempt, just fear. The kind that makes people realize their looks and titles don't protect them from consequences. She left without another word. That afternoon, Claire texted one line. Boardroom. 4 o'clock. Back entrance. I went. The building felt different when you know the walls are listening. Quiet. Sterile. People moving like they didn't want to be caught near the blast radius. Claire met me in the hallway, composed as always, but her eyes were lit with something hard. He thinks he can negotiate, she said. Inside the boardroom, we sat in the back, 2 silent witnesses behind glass and leather chairs. Then Brandon Pierce walked in. He wore confidence like a suit that no longer fit. Smile ready, shoulders back. He nodded at board members like he was still in charge of the air. Folders waited at each seat. The chairwoman didn't waste time. Mr. Pierce, sit. Brandon's smile held for half a second too long. Then he sat. The room dismantled him without raising its voice. Receipts, missing reports, emails, a timeline that showed intent, not accident. Still frames from security footage. His hand on my shirt, his face turned in anger, the exact moment he stopped being a leader and became a liability. Brandon tried to talk. I tried to charm. Tried to threaten without sounding like he was threatening. No one blink feed. Finally, the chairwoman slid one last document forward. Brandon Pierce, she said, clean and cold. You are terminated for cause, effective immediately. No applause. No drama. Just finality. Security appeared like they'd been waiting behind the wall the whole time. Brandon stood, jaw tight, eyes scanning for someone to save him. Nobody did. As they escorted him out, he looked at Claire, then at me, like we were the ones who'd changed the rules. But we hadn't. We just stopped pretending they didn't apply. Once Brandon fell, Ashley had nowhere left to stand. No ladder. No cover. No, it's complicated story she could sell to people who'd already read the receipts. She tried anyway. It started with texts, soft at first, like she could rewind time by changing her tone. Can we talk? I miss you. We've been through so much. Then she showed up in person on a Sunday afternoon, dressed like she was going to meet someone important. Hair done. Eyes careful. The version of Ashley that used to work on me. I didn't mean for any of this to happen, she said. I didn't invite her in. I stood in the doorway with the chain still on because some symbols matter. You meant for it to happen, I said. You just didn't mean for it to cost you. Her face tightened. That's not fair. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because she still didn't get it. Fair, I said. Fair was me coming home every day and choosing you. Fair was me trusting you when you gave me reasons not to. You didn't break this by accident, Ashley. You built it. Her voice softened, like she was reaching for the last tool she had. We have history, Ryan. I held her gaze. History isn't a reason to stay. It's proof of how long I tolerated less than I deserved. That landed. I saw it in her eyes. The moment she understood she couldn't charm her way back into the role she'd thrown away. I can fix it, she said, smaller now. I shook my head once. I'm not your rehab project. Divorce papers arrived 2 weeks later. Mine and Claire's moved through the system like adults handling business. No theatrics, no screaming, just signatures and clean endings. Ashley dragged hers out at first. Threats, tears, a few ugly emails she probably regretted sending the second she hit enter. Then reality did what it always does. Closed in. She lost her job, lost the network, lost the rooms she used to walk into with confidence. She downsized into a smaller life she never wanted, and she wore it like a punishment instead of a consequence. Brandon disappeared across state lines with a reputation that followed him like a shadow. He wasn't the headline guy anymore. He was a cautionary tale. And me? I didn't win by destroying them. I won by stopping the part of me that kept begging for scraps. Claire and I didn't turn into some tabloid ending. No victory lap. No performance. We built something quiet. Meals that didn't taste like tension, conversations that didn't feel like tests, silence that didn't carry a threat. One night, months later, I stood in the living room of my new place. Different walls, different air, and I caught myself waiting for the old anxiety to show up. Didn't. I thought about the man I used to be, the one who believed being steady meant being safe, the one who tried to love someone into respecting him. And I finally admitted the truth without flinching. The real revenge wasn't taking anything from them. It was refusing to abandon myself after they tried to rewrite my worth.
Subscribe and stay one step ahead of cheaters. And trust me, the next story makes this one look like a fairy tale.